sometimes people fall in this trap. Don't try and do everything. Don't try and make everyone happy. That's super important. I'm both looking forward to our chat and also a bit scared of it. God knows what you're going to ask me.
Iraklis is the Greek bartender, actually, who came to the MENA region, built, scaled, and exited a tech streaming platform, among other things that you've built. This is a very interesting transition in your life.
In the beginning, I had to do a lot of faking until you make it. To this day, I have this, the infamous imposter syndrome, where I think that people around me think that I know more than what I actually know. People should be less precious about titles, because you can be named CTO of something just because someone happened to hire you with that title doesn't mean you are actually that. There is this misconception that, especially with engineers, that you have to follow a certain path. Your product has to appeal to everyone. That's not the case. Ideally, you start a product because you have identified a very specific niche or tribe that needs it, and you go after them. So that's us. That's Peggy.us. With Peggy, you can create creatives. You can generate creatives for social media posts and ads very quickly in under a minute.
Iraklis, hi.
Hey, Summer.
How are you doing, man?
I'm very good and very happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm both looking forward to our chat and also a bit scared of it. God knows what you're going to ask me.
No, just keep it casual. We're going to go very deep on some areas. I'd like to introduce you first, to whoever doesn't know you yet. Iraklis is the Greek guy who came to, the Greek bartender, actually, who came to the MENA region, to Dubai specifically, built, scaled, and exited a tech streaming platform, among other things that you've built. This is a very interesting transition in your life. And I think it's a segue to, start digging and asking some questions. Do you agree to the sentence, by the way?
It's factually correct. Indeed, I was a bartender. Since my bartending days, I can't claim that, I've kept up with how well I could drink, but that's a good thing. Throughout my whole kind of journey so far, I've always tried to didn't try to take unconventional paths for the sake of it, but the paths were somewhat unconventional themselves. And so far, it's worked well.
Why did you have to be a bartender at that point? How old were you? Why did you choose that? For how long you stayed? What did you learn from that experience?
First of all, I think you learn from every experience. And there are some experiences that are very close to your personality and your traits and how you see people and, society around you. And when I'm thinking about bartending, it's, you try and serve people around you and ensure they have a good time, they're safe, they're enjoying their time, and they can be themselves. And that is a much more broader thing than just coming out at night and, having a drink and all that. It's much more than that. I can tell you about some tips and tricks and, some things that I've learned as well. As I said, it's very unconventional path. Like when I was growing up, I was a good student, also into sports and stuff. So I managed to get in a good school here at university in Greece. But when I ended up finishing university, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And already I had started working at, bars and restaurants and all that. And I kind of liked that. It was fun. It was serving the purpose of, me being employed and, making some money, but also meeting people and stuff. And it's always something that I enjoyed. Whenever I would go out, I would look at the bartender and I would be like, I want to be that guy. So I ended up being that guy. And as I was doing that for a few years, I never really took seriously the other aspect of, I finished my studies. I could work, by the way, I studied computer science and, I could be a programmer and I could work for a company. I never really considered that seriously until a bit later when I decided that, maybe it's time I do something with this degree that I have there sitting. And then slowly I started working at a company as a developer. I was pretty bad at it. I don't think I knew much when I graduated. But I was always curious and I always kept digging when I didn't know something. Slowly, one step at a time, I ended up knowing a bit more and then a bit more. And then I would constantly throw myself in situations where in the beginning, I had to do a lot of faking until you make it. I mean, to this day, there are days where I have this, the infamous imposter syndrome, where I think that people around me think that I know more than what I actually know. And then you realize not that many people actually know what's going on. There are a few bright people in my life that I've met that, they're like beacons of knowledge and unbelievable brilliance. But most of us...
But the rest of us are just figuring it out, we're literally figuring
exactly,
it out.
we try to figure it out, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. There are so many things to know. I mean, there are infinite things to know, basically. And all of us were multifaceted. There is work, there is family, there is any other hobby or creative activity you have. And most likely you can excel at everything. But what you can do and what you owe to yourself to do is to push yourself and invest your time in the things that at least make you feel fulfilled and satisfied. I don't want to talk much about, follow your passion, all that, because this has become such a, it sounds like a TED talk. There are things you think you're passionate and it's actually other people projecting their aspirations on you. But when something feels fulfilling, it's a kind of thing that you find yourself lost in it and you forget about time if you can. And you just do it because it feels right and because you just enjoy the journey. So the more you can increase the amount of time you spend doing that, I would argue that, the happier and healthier you will end up being. And that's not like a, well-being advice or anything. It's just a no-brainer, right?
But going back to the bartending days, I would like to understand, like any other human being, we sometimes are faced with decisions, right? So initially you're enjoying it, but then you're like, okay, I actually want to maybe, I don't know, you felt like this is not fulfilling enough from a career perspective or from a financial perspective. I'm not sure what exactly happened, but like something happened where you're like, okay, let me go and continue what I started. And then, as you mentioned, like you weren't that good at the beginning, etc. But first of all, really, what pushed you to choose tech again? What you anyway initially signed up to study?
For sure, it's the kind of job that unless you want to pursue it as a proper career, and when I say career, there are people out there who are, professional. They're almost like quote unquote chemists when it comes to what they do and how they do it and at what level they do it. I wasn't really like into pursuing that at that point. For me, it was more of a fun profession with many other extensions in terms of how it teaches you to read people, read situations. And it's really a good exercise for raising your empathy as well, because you're sitting at a very good vantage point where you can see everyone and everything very clearly. And you can see the micro mannerisms. You can see how people feel, if they feel comfortable, if they feel excited, if they feel insecure. You have the ability sometimes to actually help people overcome some things. Like, for example, you might see in a group of people a person who is a bit more shy, and you can actually make that person, you can involve that person in the conversation with the rest and make him or her the star of the conversation. And it's not because like you have some magical powers. It's just, you just have a different vantage point and and if you will, the ability at that point to influence a bit the discussion. So,
yeah.
Things like that are very interesting. But apart from that, I did feel that I didn't think there was much more to it for me to gain out of it at that point and at the level that I was exploring it. And as I said, I was always looking for like new challenges and things that felt uncomfortable. So this was one of it. I was like, okay, how would I approach that if I were to work and start building code or start building software? I know a little bit about it, but how would I get to know more and how would I get better at it? So it was just another challenge that I wanted to explore, basically.
You really, and like, not to brag, but really you were able to, start from wherever, from the bottom, let's say, when it comes to, this space, and then really end up being a very successful CTO, I would say. I've worked a little bit with you. I've seen how you work, how you run things, how efficient things are, etc. The business sense that also comes to it, etc. Like, if you can give, really, the advice would go maybe towards you, wherever X years ago, 10 years, I don't know how long has it been since you started this. And if you can really maybe break it down into some principles or some methods, etc. How did you learn what you learned? What are the things that you maybe focused on that were stupid, you shouldn't have focused on, or the opposite? What are the things you're so lucky that you have learned or someone have taught you, etc. For a software engineer, basically, to really become a killer CTO, a good co-founder, someone who can really come and build more startups into the ecosystem, etc. Because not all engineers think like that, and not all engineers pursue it as an end goal. As some point, I want to build my own venture, etc. And I think we really need more and more of these builders. So I think you're one of the most important people in the region who has done that path and have learned it again from the very beginning.
So first of all, I think you're too kind. So let's start with the first thing you said, that I started from the bottom. So one thing that's important is for all of us to be very conscious of how we start and where we start and what are the pluses and the advantages that we have when we start. So for example, the country that I was born in, the place where I was educated, I was very lucky to have some of the things that are not given for many other people. So yes, with that mini ecosystem of, let's say, Greece and whatever I was doing, maybe I started from the bottom, if you want to call it this way. But in the grand scheme of things, I was much more privileged than many other people who don't have access to, many of the things that we take for granted. So I think it's very important for many of us to realize that, because I keep hearing the term sometimes like self-made this, self-made that. Yes, no one challenges and no one doubts that, certain individuals, and I have also worked hard for certain things, but I was also lucky enough to be able to not worry about other things. We didn't have war here. We didn't have many things that other people have to deal with. And it's important to ground ourselves and remember that. So with that in mind, yes, there was a lot of hard work involved. One thing that I like to do is when I do something, I like to extrapolate a bit the principles of what it is that I'm doing. For example, when you write code, when you write software, you basically try to tell, back then in the day the machines were not that smart, the dumbest thing on earth, which is a computer back then, and doesn't understand anything more than whatever you tell it, is to do something. So if you take that principle that you explain it to something that doesn't have the context, which is understanding, if I talk to you, I can tell you one word and you understand like all the rest. With a computer, you have to be very explicit, right? And once you manage to break down your thought in that level and be that precise, you can actually become a better communicator. Mm-hmm. You can be very explicit. You can be more verbose or less verbose. And funny enough, it actually helps you write better prompts. Because at the end of the day, like, a good prompt is just you being a good communicator, explaining something to someone. That's it, right? Now, going back into, what was the path that I took? I think it's important that you are always curious and that you give yourself permission to go down interesting rabbit holes. There are many things that seem like a black box. And indeed, some things are very sophisticated and very complicated, but this doesn't mean you cannot grasp them. But there are some other things that the difference between you really understanding what's going on and you just treating it as, oh, it's there, like, I can't do anything about it. It's just a matter of you wanting to dive deeper and understand something, right? And this is a pattern that I've seen and, I keep following for the things that matter to me and the things that interest me in my life. And that only leads to just more knowledge, and not just more knowledge, but getting to know new things is also a skill. Learning how to learn is something, is the same thing like learning how to lift or learning how to shoot a basketball. The more you do it, the better you become at it, and the less overwhelmed and lost you are by the fact that to start with, you just don't know anything, right?
And you develop confidence, I guess. Like you also develop confidence.
You do develop confidence. Yes.
That's a topic. It was new to me here 2-3 weeks later. I already did a proof of concept wherever, you're trying.
Definitely. Now, one thing that I want to stress is because you mentioned about like, me starting, let's say, as an engineer and then like becoming, I don't know, CTO or something like that.
Yes, tell us please from the early beginnings. IT consultant, I guess I saw something on LinkedIn to did something in Berlin and then becoming CTO of Sukelmar, for example. This is in 7 years. This is what happened, right?
People should be less precious about titles because you can be named CTO of something just because someone happened to hire you with that title doesn't mean you are actually that. It's like wanting to sell a house on a real estate platform and putting it for like, 10 million where its value is 500. You put it there, but no one's going to buy it, right? So what I'm trying to say is that there is this misconception that, especially with engineers, and I'm sure it applies to other professions and other expertise, that you have to follow a certain path. Let's say with engineers, there is this concept that I started as a developer, I became a senior developer, I became a team lead, I became a something else, and CTO, and unicorns and like rainbows everywhere. And sometimes people fall in this trap.
Exactly.
So a lot of people feel pressure into having to put themselves in this kind of progression. And many of them find themselves very unhappy along the way, especially as they live further from, let's say, being an engineer. Because being a manager of people, regardless of what kind of domain you are in, you can be in tech, in marketing or finance or whatever, comes with a whole lot of skills and requirements and challenges that have very little to do with how good of an engineer you are. And not everyone enjoys that. And some people find themselves really trapped. They find themselves, I have to want this. I have to be this, but I feel miserable. And many of them actually end up saying, you know what? Actually, I don't want to be a people's manager. I want to be just a solo developer building my code in my cave. And that's absolutely fine. Unfortunately, though, the whole corporate system and even the remuneration for people, like how much they make, is usually tied into titles.
Yeah.
I've seen actually in more engineering themed companies, I've seen people being considered as good or like, even more senior than other managers. And they are like principal engineer. They are, that thing. So they are respected for that thing. So it's important for individuals, I think, to really acknowledge and take some time to think about what makes them happy and whether the trajectory they think they're optimizing for, it's something that is really going to be a good fit for them.
On this point, great. So then what will be the potential outcomes? Because I totally agree. And I also think this is especially true when it comes to engineering. You already pick as software engineering, like you pick an industry where you probably really like logic. You like, you're just that logical guy. You're a machine. You can, read and process code and build infrastructures in your head. Like, if you're a good engineer, you're doing all of that. And all of these skills are really logic, perspective, maybe, like it's all in your head and in your brain and thinking, and like there is obviously some collaboration, but it's not a people's job. People who pick that probably is because it's not a people's job. It's because it's really you and your IQ and your level of innovation and how much you could read documentation and write clean code. And I so believe that there's so much skills when it comes to good engineers that have nothing to do with really the social part or the management part or like efficiency, capacity, etc. Versus a lot of other roles where it also involves a lot of, people's skills in the first place. And yeah, this turns like you cannot use the same system to rank and, maybe incentivize engineers, because a great engineer could be someone who doesn't want to manage anyone and make sure your system is always up and running and saves you a lot of money. Like, how come this is not a great person to celebrate? And so on that regard, so what would you advise the engineer? Okay, a great engineer, what are all the potential things they could do, right? One of them being CTO.
First of all, there is actually a very hidden, subtle people aspect in being a good engineer, but I'm talking about properly good engineers. And when I say properly good, I mean people who really care about their craft and what they develop and what they deliver to the world. At the end of the day, when you build something, you build it for someone. You put it out there and you want that someone to be happy and enjoy the experience of using what it is that you built.
Yeah.
And you can see that. You can see well-crafted software is so pleasurable. And the people who built it, you can see that they wanted you to feel this way. So there is this hidden, subtle kind of aspect to it, which I actually find myself in everyday life. Like I find myself I feel this weird enjoyment preparing things for others in a way, which is basically quote unquote API, preparing things for others in a way that makes it so easy and so intuitive for them to do it. It could be anything from how I put the plates when I serve lunch to someone or anything. So when you consider that most of the things you do, you build interfaces for others to communicate with the thing that you build APIs. And the better you want to build this, that shows also what kind of, in some aspects, it can even be an indication of what kind of person you are. But indeed, a big part of engineering is, I want to just focus on what it is that I'm doing. Obviously, you collaborate with other people if you work in big teams. And I think there are many paths to take, and there are many aspects in terms of like people and emotional development that some people overlook, which is engineers sometimes tend to be a bit more dismissive of people who are not engineers. And I've been through that. And it's just thinking back to how I would react sometimes or how I would position some things. It's like borderline embarrassing. Because then when you actually end up having to do the other people's jobs who are not engineers, and I'm talking about when you run your own startup where you basically do everything, you're humbled by how not easy the other things are. And sometimes you're like, you know what? I'm better off doing the thing I was doing before rather than doing all these other people's jobs. So I think it's important for engineers to build empathy, and they get that by actually working with other non-engineer people. That's why when you get people working together on an initiative and it's a cross-functional team, they get more exposed to that. The other one is understanding how to critique something without being jerks. It's very common for engineers to just look at other people's code and just be horrible people, whereas they can just provide constructive feedback. And that is also a general aspect that you can apply to your life. And yeah, I can think of many other things. Your question was, what are the paths they can take, right?
Yes. What is let's talk about really good engineers, serious about their career. Of course, they want to do more. How can they do more for themselves, for the world? One of them, again, is becoming CTO if this is what they want. But then obviously there might be other avenues. And then it's a brainstorm. If we can really together, figure out really what are all we can literally break them down and figure out what could be. And, ask the audience to even more ideas, etc. It's just a really brainstorm of, if you're an engineer in MENA, what are all your possible outcomes? What can you really do to succeed at what you do?
So if you're an engineer, there are many parameters you need to consider, and the same goes for any other kind of domain. Because you could, let's put a specific example. Let's say you're a backend developer in JavaScript, okay? everyone loves JavaScript developers, right? So let's say you're expert in like Node.js or something like that.
Mhm.
You could have 10 different Node.js jobs and have 10 different, completely different experiences, depending on the size of the team, the domain that the team works, the culture of the team, the geography, the way the team works, whether they work synchronously, asynchronously, and many, many different aspects. So rather than trying to say like, okay, you're an engineer, what are the paths you should take? I think I'm gonna answer with a slightly different kind of
Structure,
answer, but I'm gonna get back to it, which is I like to try and optimize for the kind of life that I want to lead.
When you do that when you're 23, though, do you have the choice to optimize for the life you want to live, or you're saying it now in hindsight?
I'm saying in hindsight with everything that I know. I don't think I had the clarity back then to be able to think like that. But this doesn't mean I cannot share that with other people in case like maybe they wanna take that approach. So let's say when you build a company, I think the most important question to ask yourself is what kind of life do I want to live? Like for example, if you don't enjoy being on back-to-back meetings and having presentations and all that stuff, most likely you shouldn't build a business that is meant to be a VC-backed business where you need to go and meet investors and you basically need to do all of the stuff that you don't want to do, right? If you enjoy that, then maybe you're in a good area if you build a business like that. So you have to kind of a bit reverse engineer how, after you know yourself a bit, and that happens only with years, you have to reverse engineer and think, okay, what makes me happy? So what kind of environment and what kind of tasks would make me happy? So being an engineer, for example, if you know that you enjoy, let's say, getting certifications and being part of a very big group and working on something very small and all that stuff, then probably you should optimize for working for a big corporate company, and maybe that's where you see yourself fit, and maybe there's other things and other perks. But if you're the kind of person where you want to move things very fast, you get frustrated by bureaucracy, you want to be able to make decisions and execute on them very fast, then maybe you should optimize more for a smaller company, knowing, of course, the risks that, it's a risk, it's a startup, it might work, it might not work, and all that. So starting from the traits and the characteristics of the workplace that makes you happy, you should start thinking that first. And then obviously, there is the technical aspect of it. So if you find yourself getting agitated when you don't work with the latest technology and you want to work more on something that's very high tech for the sake of being high tech rather than, I don't know, building something more basic like e-commerce, then again, you should probably try and find some spots and some positions in this kind of companies. So what I'm trying to say is really try and think what makes you happy genuinely, not what you think makes you happy, not what you read on LinkedIn, not what you see on Twitter, not what you think you should be liking, but what deep down, you've catch yourself being happy when you do it, and try and optimize for that.
Yeah.
And that can take you to different paths, which you don't have to know from the beginning. One thing that I've learned over the years is that even to this day, I find myself very often not knowing what I want to do, but what I know for a fact is what I don't want to do. And as I grow older, I end up building a longer list of the things I don't want to do, which limits the things, or it doesn't limit. It's like
it prepares for a good yes, and then these no's are not distractions.
Yeah, it just I'm going to steal probably I'm not going to use it properly, but it kind of guides. If you are a vector, it guides you towards the area that you should be focusing more on.
Yeah.
By eliminating all the noise. And eliminating noise in life is, I think, one of the most important things, because it's just draining, and there's just so much time. You don't have time for everything. So if you can really try and think of what you don't want to do and try and think of the things that make you happy, then try and optimize for that. And that will take you into different paths. You might think you're a Node.js developer, you might end up falling in love with something else. Keep an open mind, because that's the only way to explore new things.
Like maybe the first few years, figure out your no's or test against them, or see you have to imagine they're starting and you have to basically the first 1 to 5 years, wherever. How would you build it to maximize reaching your point, which is really optimized towards what you really like at some point?
The first years, I would just say don't be too adamant on anything, because you don't know enough. And just try things, increase your exposure surface, increase your exposure to different things, and see what sticks, because it could be things that you haven't thought about at all, Or it could be that by you doing things that you were not involved in before, you actually acquired knowledge that you applied to the thing that you want to do. Because some things are just like cross-functional, and some things are just general principles in life. Keep your antenna up and try and follow a bit deeper the things that seem interesting to you.
Like weekend project, build something on the side, like figure out, hack something.
But make it less overwhelming, because the problem is that people have acquired this cinematic view on life. You see in movies, you have like the hero and something happens, and then you have like basically like 10 years happening in 1 minute with some music in the background, either like, whatever, uplifting music or whatever. And then suddenly there's a eureka moment. Wow, we solved the problem. People expect things to be like that. But in reality, things happen in a much more unceremonial way. So you have to be prepared for the fact that nothing is going to happen and suddenly it's going to feel in a certain way. Things just happen slowly, but it's those small, continuous progression steps that take you somewhere else.
Of course, startups are not for everyone. We focus more on startups on the show. So let's say you are to build a startup. Like you figured out, yeah, I really like to build things. I like to build them fast. And I like to have a say on what I'm building also, because, the smaller the team, the more you have a say, and then the larger you, I guess, wouldn't. There will be other people paid to make the decisions. So you like building. Now you also have, I guess, at least two paths, if not more. One being like bootstrapping and like try to figure out how, being a solo founder, etc. And the other one maybe more like the traditional VC route, where you would potentially like start somewhere and then raise, etc. And sadly, also for our region, I would say, at least for the GCC, let's say, speaking of UAE and Saudi, maybe the ones that I know of, where like it's not as cheap to start startup. Consider, let's say you're an engineer, like can you really leave your job, pay this rent, pay the cost of living, etc., and work from a garage? Which garage? Probably your parents are not even in the region if you're not local. So you don't have the garage, you don't have the low costs. You don't start a company for $20. Like, what do you think about this? Always has been something that we really, when we compare a lot, towards San Francisco and, the West and all the developed big ecosystems. I think it also starts with the builders, the builders and how equipped they are. Honestly, I think in our region, they're like, you're most likely to start a business being a business person than being a tech person in MENA, because you get paid more, you have saved, you've done an MBA, you've been exposed to more of the business world, and then, you can afford maybe an engineer or a CTO or like, wherever. It's mainly starts like that. And this really pains me a lot. So I would like your comment on this and in general on how to start each of the paths. What would your recommendation as someone who's done that?
I mean, first of all, I would say try and de-risk the venture at all costs as much as you can. So definitely unless you can and you can afford it, quitting your job just to pursue something that little about or you don't have much validation about, it's a very risky path. That's going to end up being very painful. And not just that, but the financial pressure that will start building up will force you to even not function at your best and even make bad decisions.
I failed miserably on this one, by the way, in one of my startups, like miserably.
Yeah, we all have.
Like, did I calculate the amount of money I'm not going to make or the amount of money I'm going to lose if it goes bad? And the chance of success, like the rounded chance of success.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. There is no trick or silver bullet. You have to put the work. And usually if you have a full-time job, and most full-time jobs in MENA are very demanding, that means you're going to try and make some time for that to happen. Now, making time has to do a lot with, or making the most of your time. It has to do a lot with time auditing. Like, what do you end up spending time on? And really, time these days can slip away. 30-minute blocks and 1-hour blocks can just get lost from your day, just from you being on your phone and thinking like, oh, that was like 5 minutes. And it ends up being 30 minutes to watching shows, to whatever. And by no means, if you enjoy doing that, just, keep on doing it if that makes you happy. But there's only 24 hours in a day, so you just cannot do everything. If you choose that you want to do something else, you want to build a venture, and you have another day job, and probably you also need to sleep, because the whole thing about not sleeping and this goes back into I can't take anymore people glorifying this whole oh, I'm not sleeping and I passed out and I haven't eaten for 24 hours. Who are you glorifying this for? You think anyone is going to come and give you a badge or anything? Did you make the world a better place? Did you save anyone? Did you save a child from war or hunger or anything? No. You're just doing this for yourself and posting inspirational things. I really think this culture doesn't help anyone. If anything, take good care of yourself. You only have yourself. Eat well, sleep well, rest well, so you can actually function like a proper human being, and you get more years to do things, and you don't burn yourself out, which might create such a negative experience that you might never want to try it again. So going back to that, I would say it's important that you try and be realistic and pragmatic about what you can do. But if you can really find, let's say, 2 hours a day, but 2 hours, proper 2 hours of deep work, no interruptions, no distractions, and you have a very good idea of what are the most important things that you have to do, then you can achieve a lot. But it's all an exercise of planning, and it's all an exercise of really understanding the trade-offs. If I give you like 24 hours to do something, you're going to spend 24 hours to do something. But did you really need to spend that much time? Probably not. So, sometimes constraints really force you to make the right decision. So let's say, you imagine like you get, or let's say I get diagnosed with some crazy, like a weird thing that if you spend 1 hour and 1 minute on screen every day, something bad is going to happen to you. You're going to try and do in 1 hour the things, not everything that you were doing before. You're going to do the most impactful things. The same thing applies here. So let's say if you build a venture and you want to start yourself and you can only put 2 hours every day, don't spend all the time in like, the reset password form and I don't know what. You can do that later. Do the thing that really matters. Build the thing that will validate your hypothesis and will show you whether the thing you're building is worth building or not. Because then you might end up discovering early on that, thank God I discovered that I was about to waste 3 years of my life being there, building something that I think, people need. And now I just discovered in 1 month or 2 months. So I saved myself the pain. I took my takeaways and, learnings, and now I can pursue something else. It's important to always try and de-risk things, but also important to try and eliminate or make the reasons for you to procrastinate smaller. So if you think of something very big, like you're thinking of like, I need to build like Uber, I don't know, whatever. I mean, there's a zillion reasons why you shouldn't start. Probably most of them are right. But if you start thinking about how big the whole thing is, it's just scary, right?
Yeah.
But if you really break it down into like, okay, what do I actually need to start with? What's the smallest thing I need to do? And then you can just like, focus on doing that thing. A funny kind of mental trick that I do sometimes, which is completely silly, but it kind of works, or at least, I used to use it back then. Like if there was, let's say, an email that I really was procrastinating, I didn't want to reply to, I would just hit reply and type, "Hi, Summer, thanks, Iraklis." So I would almost mentally force myself to get in the situation of, okay, now I'm composing this email. I've started, I finished. Now I have to write the middle part. It sounds silly, but in a way it kind of works. So you have to find the lowest kind of barrier to entry way to get into the thing that you need to do. Get do the most impactful thing out of it, and continue.
Okay, so basically, don't for sure throw all your money away. Don't throw away the security, etc. Build fast something that people potentially want. Try to validate. Okay, I think here now that we're entering the MVP part, which I think is one of the things most founders, first time or not, like still can't figure out. Okay, what is really an MVP? Where do I stop? I think at least because I've seen really this mistake happen a lot, which is you really build much more than you should, much more than I should have at least. And the famous quote, which is, if your product looks good, you're probably like very late launching, etc. Whoever, was popular with this quote. But okay, then how do you really know and discipline yourself and know where to really stop? What's something that's already valuable? Especially talking for a first-time founder who, for them, like they want to build the entire thing because this is what they've used. These are the types of softwares they've used. They've never seen MVPs really before, etc. How do you really try to limit that and give advice that can stick? Because again, this is one of the most important advice that is hard to follow unless maybe it hits you. Like, okay, why do you really need to do that and how to do it effectively?
Well, I mean, one thing is you have to be brutally honest to yourself. And people tell themselves the stories they want to hear when it comes to building something and seeing no traction and thinking that, I don't see traction because if I fix my emails and I make them responsive, if I add this one more feature, then I'm sure this is, I'm going to get traction, because people just don't want to face the music and see that, what it is that they're building, no one cares about.
So there is a bit of that. Of delaying, procrastinating the response, embellishing it, right? Adding more, like making it more
think about it. It's rejection. Who wants to face rejection, right? It's rejection on the thing that you're very passionate about and the thing that you built. So rejection on the thing you built can project as rejection on you as an individual.
100%.
So
100%.
people obviously will try and defend themselves and guard themselves from that.
How can you remove yourself from the equation and your ego, right? How can you just keep, like, that's just a tool to collect value and data. That's it. How can you disassociate and really like take it very scientifically?
First of all, don't take yourself too seriously. No, I mean, I'm not saying I'm good at doing that, but I think the first thing is to realize that the fact that you are considering building something is already something that is not very common. You know, I know so many people who have an idea. You know, I have an idea, and I would have done it, and but this happened. I mean, if you already started building it, you're already like one step forward. You took a conscious decision, and you're actually doing something about it. You're building it. So always keep in mind that if the current thing you're doing doesn't work, and you know, doesn't work is a very broad thing. Like, for example, one of the startups, one of the products that we built was based on a huge failure that I had built before. We're talking huge, like no one cared. But
that's not huge, by the way. You consider it huge. Huge, no one cared means no one cared means too tiny. It's not even a huge, right? In the universe, like
true. I mean, it's not huge as in like at least we didn't burn like billions of dollars. Yeah. So it was like a nothing.
But for any first-time founder, would feel like that, right? It's a huge thing, but in reality, man, just do the next thing.
Everything you build has one or two things that are the most difficult. It could be the secret sauce. It could be the thing that seems the most complicated. So my first approach would be address this head on first. Don't leave it for last. And I did this, let's say, for example, the platform we're building, which was a virtual events platform. Some of the things that the things that were the most unknown to me, I decided to attack first. Because if I couldn't understand how to do those things, then I would have spent a lot of time. I would have risked a lot of money and time building, and then maybe in the end realize that, oh, this is like beyond me, or I don't know how to do it, or it's too expensive or whatever. So I would say, first of all, address the difficult thing that is the core part of the product head on. Then the next thing would be, as you build something, try and really be honest to yourself about, is there anyone out there who actually needs this thing? And before you invest too much in building it, unless you enjoy, there are people who just enjoy building software, and that's fine, but know that you do it because you enjoy building software, not because you need to build all that stuff to validate a hypothesis of whether someone needs a grooming shop for lizards. You're
just doing your hobby. You're not really building a business. You're doing your hobby. You're exercising your hobby.
Yeah, which is fine, right? So don't mix these two. But if you're building something for someone, ideally you should know who you're building it for. Like, it shouldn't be an idea that just came to you and you think, oh, people would use it. Ideally, you've seen someone suffering from not having the solution you're envisioning, and you've seen someone needing something better, or you've used something that felt like, it could be, a bit better. Ideally, you start from that, because that at least helps you a bit with validating that the thing you build, someone cares about. And that can help with traction. And traction is not just important because you end up building something which has a reason to exist, but it's also a big motivator. Building something on your own, sometimes you really have to, you're thinking, why am I doing this? Like, until you actually get people using your product, which in the beginning, by the way, feels so weird. Like, when you build something and you start getting your first credit card payment online, you're like, really? That person paid for the thing I just built? But, I know it's crap. I know it's not working. I know it has bugs or whatever.
But I don't deserve
it. Yeah, it's always weird. But it's such a huge motivating factor,
Yeah. It's validation. It's literally validation.
I mean, you can get more motivated from getting paid $9.99 for your product than getting paid $100K from your salary. Obviously, $9.99 is not going to get you far, and you're probably going to starve. But still, you have to keep going. So all I'm trying to say is, like, de-risk, try and address the most challenging, difficult core part first, and validate your hypothesis in the quote-unquote cheapest way possible. Like, for example, if you can just get someone to send you, I don't know, build a website and have a link that sends you an email, rather than you building a whole web app that has a form that you fill up the form and it has validation, I don't know what. Try and see if anyone cares first, is there traction? And then really, I know everyone says about it, but no one does it. Really try and talk to people. It's insane.
How many people you talk to?
It depends on the how good the conversations are.
Mhm.
If you talk to people and all you do is pitch your product, you can have 1,000 calls and you will learn nothing. If you talk to people and all you try and do is just really listen and understand and resist the temptation of selling or convincing them about something, then you can learn a lot. If you also are open to accepting feedback and critique, healthy critique on what it is that you've built, you will be able to surface recurring patterns. You will see that, oh, I talked to 10 people, 3 of them seem to suffer with this thing, or they had that issue or whatever. Maybe there's something there, you know? So I would say try and think less about how many discussions to have and think more about having deep, meaningful discussions. They don't have to be 1 hour long. They just have to be very focused. And obviously you can read the mom test and all that to get ideas on how to speak to your customers. But a 15-minute call where you do more, you listen more, but the discussion is quite targeted. You can learn a lot, and from that you can understand whether what you're building should be built or not.
Someone who not only does that, that's how they started, right? Like first just talking with customers, talking with their potential users, etc., selling them, also like validating, not just like talking with them. In some cases pre-selling, so like getting paid before the final release of the product, again, as a very strong sign. But not only that, this was very interesting, they keep them on Slack. They keep especially the early adopters and people who have seen the product from the beginning, because these are the ones who would like sometimes nudge them towards, hey guys, this is not cool at all. This is not how we really want. They're the ones who know the most the product. They really know the product in a very good way. And I find it very cool that they were able to really keep, like, it was a group of 15, 20 early customers, always engaged. The channel is open for them. Bring it on, feedback, features, bugs, complaints, wherever that is. Very interesting.
I mean, it really works. We didn't really have a Slack channel, but when we were building a Balloon, I mean, our early adopters and customers were super close to us, and we're keeping them in the loop of what it is that we're doing. And we basically made it easy for them to feel that their feedback was being heard by we had a nice feedback portal where people could really submit their feedback.
What did you use?
Could see, we used Canny.io.
Nice.
I hope it's still around. I actually heard about it first on the Indie Hackers podcast. And I remember the founder was a lady. I don't remember her name, but very smart, very switched on lady. So I just liked it, and we used it. We used it as well for the change log, so that we let people know, hey, this feature is new. And our posts were quite funny. Actually, I shouldn't say that because I was writing them, so that sounds like I think I have a good sense of humor. Anyway, I hope they were funny. And we had this feedback portal, and people would submit their feedback, and they could really see us picking up the items and working through them, and they could share their thoughts, and they felt they were part of it because they were truly part of it. And we really wanted to serve them and build something that makes their life and their business much better.
Yeah. How did you learn that from not doing it before? Because it seems you did it well with Balloon. And also, like, by the way, we would love to learn more about Balloon in general, whatever you can share. Like, how did it start? It's one of the, successful startups that you've done. So like, you can share a bit more.
Well, I mean, it was a very intense exercise, but very fulfilling.
Okay.
We started, the idea of Balloon came right in the beginning of the pandemic. When all sorts of events were getting canceled left and right across the world. Myself and my co-founder were just bouncing off ideas. We knew we wanted to build something. And at that point, we're like, why don't we just do something about that? Why don't we build a platform where people can have events virtually and they can have like broadcasts and roundtables. We used to call them cocktail tables, and do networking and all that stuff. And when we first started building it, there was maybe a handful of solutions that was tailored to that, and other solutions started getting kind of extended to do that. So people would use Zoom in whatever way possible to do a virtual event, and you could still get by, you could do things, but then like literally, I've never seen any space booming as much as virtual events for that 1 year where like COVID was really settling, and like every day, honestly, there were like 5-10 new platforms out there. So it was insane. It was like insanely competitive. And you really had to move very fast.
How fast, how much? I want some details, please. Like, I want to see how, like, show in live really how a startup has been built, like from A to Z.
We built it relatively fast with a very small team, but it was very challenging in the sense that it required every single second that we had free in our day to work on this. It wasn't an easy ride. It was a lot of work. Whenever we would build something in the beginning, there's always this fine line of thinking too much ahead and overcomplicating a product versus putting in the pipes for whatever is going to come next. When I build a product, think of a big mansion, like a 10-bedroom mansion with like a TV, like cinema room and playroom and 2 dining areas and I don't know what. But when you start building it, you only have enough money to build 1 bedroom and one bathroom. So the way I build products is like that. So rather than me not launching the whole thing until I build the whole mansion, I build first enough for me to be able to move in and live. You need to be able to sleep and use a bathroom, right? But then the way I architect things is I make sure to put the pipes for what's to come, so that when traction comes, when guests come, when we have enough money to build, everything just plugs nicely. And sometimes you actually surprise yourself with how much you can foresee some things. And of course, some other times you're completely wrong and you have to refactor some things. But in this case...
But this requires CTO thinking, like product/CTO, like if it is the same person, which in most cases it has been you, who's been thinking about the product and the tech at the same time, you can kind of also nail it well because of how the database is going to be designed, etc., etc. It requires product. I don't see it with all engineers. Sometimes you have to really explain to the engineer what you want versus them telling you, hey, you can do this, or do you know you can also do it like that. And this is kind of thinking.
And I think when you build a product, if you want to really build something with, thinking ahead, there's 2 skills you need. One is obviously the technical knowledge, which is what you just mentioned. But the other one, which is the most important thing, is to really, really, really try and role play using the thing you build. I think people don't spend enough time doing that. And I do that with everything. Like, for example, I don't know, we're talking about, let's say you have a house and you want to clean the garden, Like, I'm really going to put myself in like, okay, so we walk in the garden has this, so I probably need gloves. Then probably, there's no water supply, maybe I need to bring a hose. If you start really role-playing the thing and really walking virtually, then those things, it's not a magical ability. Those things will just appear.
But not everyone can think spatial thinking like that, like, projecting the users.
It takes some practice.
Care, and a lot of care. Like, you have to care.
But there's also the technical aspect, and I'll tell you something about it. So, for example, we had a very specific feature where you could upload a list of attendees. Let's say, for example, a person is running a virtual event and they got 100,000 attendees from their physical event or from their website or whatever. And they want to onboard all these people on our platform. In the beginning, we didn't have the case where like someone would upload tens of thousands of records or whatever. But I knew that if things went well, this would very soon be the case. And I knew that this would have to be scaled in a way that was non-costly, but also not impacting the core experience, which is what the rest of the people were doing on the platform itself. So the way we architected this, it did take a bit longer. It wasn't exactly like premature optimization, which is, the death of all products, if you know the saying, but it was a bit of optimization ahead of time. So we did something with that, which was very technical. It's not rocket science, by the way. It's just, we use the serverless functions. That's it. I'm not claiming it's something people have not done.
But you had to think about using it.
But it worked well for that case. And indeed, when the time came and we had events where people would, upload tens of thousands of attendees, the system didn't break a sweat. No one felt anything. And this was a good, validation to that. So again, that is important, to find the right balance between optimize it, but not too early and not too much basically to not help the product progress and launch.
Yes. Whose job is this, Iraklis? Is this because you could be, if you are the engineer building, cool, you're probably the co-founder, so most probably it's gonna fall under your shoulders. But who is it?
I'm a huge believer of explaining and taking a lot of time and being as explicit and as verbose as possible. We work together. We work together now as well. And you see the long Slack messages that I send. I don't send long Slack messages because I enjoy it or it's fast for me.
Okay, when you send them, I just feel safe. Cool. Does it answer a little bit? It really shows that someone has thought through things, through the possibilities, through if this goes wrong or otherwise the alternative route. I, as a reader, can say that's what I'm receiving, and you see okay, there's someone I feel safe. There's all these potential possibilities. Sometimes there are suggestions. It's very, very articulate and strong and logical how you write usually. Yes. So as someone who has witnessed them.
First of all, I'm a fan of, I know it sounds morbid, of the plane crash approach, which what I mean by that is that if something happens to me, God forbid, things will continue working because the knowledge is not just in my head. And it's not just about the knowledge. It's even the background story of how things should work and why we do what we do. Secondly, when you work with people, with a team, when I work with developers, ideally I work with developers who are better engineers than me. And all I'm here to do is to enable them to do their best work. But for me to enable them to do their best work, they have to understand why they build what they build. When you treat developers as just like task completers, then that's what you're going to get, right? Because it's just individuals. But when you include people in your thought process, when you show them, this is why we do what we do, then they really understand. And the amount of time that after a while, I've worked with people, and it's working now as well with the product that I'm building. We're going to talk about it. When the team comes back with suggestions, you're like, that's it. Like, my work is done here. That's the definition. The definition of a good team is that moment when you slack someone and say like, oh, by the way, we should do this, or have we done this? And the answer is like, oh yeah, we already did. When you get that response, you're like, amazing. You have all these companies who try and like have all these perks and food tables for people and have movie nights and I don't know what. And at the end of the day, all this is just a band-aid for the lack of empowerment and creativity. But there's one thing that makes us alive and makes us feel valuable and fulfilled. And that is being able to add value, to create things. We're creative species. We like to create things. But for you to create something, you need to be given the space and you need to be given the context of what it is that you create. I think also the way to do this, like I work a lot, by the way, the product we're building now, the product we built before Balloon, I never met face to face with the team that we were working. And I always get this question, how do you handle like remote teams? And like, should we all not be in an office and all that? It was never an issue. It was never an issue. First of all, I care about them as individuals, about their lives and their well-being. And we have discussions about that. And you don't have to have virtual coffee to let someone know that you care about them. You can just let them know that you care by being empathetic and understanding when that is needed. And I've had very close relations with the team without having sat in the same room. But at the same time, for you to work effectively with teams that are across the world and maybe in different time zones, is to really be able to master working asynchronously. What I mean by working asynchronously is working in ways that communication doesn't require real-time communication, i.e. one-liners. For me, one-liner is the laziest type of communication. It's like, oh, I didn't have time to type. I didn't consider it important enough for me to explain to you what's in my head. Yeah. So I'm just going to throw you a one-liner. You're going to feel bad about yourself because you didn't understand what I said. You're going to spend more time trying to understand what I said than actually doing the thing.
Or not understand. Or misunderstand.
Yeah, you're going to send back to me another non-comprehensible one-liner, and we're going to play one-liner ping-pong. Instead, what you can do is you can compose a self-sustaining, self-reliant body of communication and pass that on. And try and be empathetic. Try and preempt the questions, but not be... In the beginning, you might be more kind of directive with people. You might give them more direction in the beginning because they might need it. For example, when you work with an engineering team and you were the one who came up with a product idea, you cannot expect everyone to read your mind. You have to, and maybe let's say if you build something for, I don't know, bioengineer or like something which is very specific in your industry, you cannot expect that the person, just because they know how to write Node.js, they also know the industry. You have to explain that to them. And the approach that I've been taking, which... I need to coin a better term because it's a bit too long. I call it the satellite payload approach. When you want to send a payload to the International Space Station, it's a very expensive trip. It's not an Uber ride. You have to load things up in a rocket, in a space shuttle, and employ many people and many systems. And you're talking probably like millions or tens of millions or hundreds. I don't know. The number is quite high. So you really want to be thoughtful with what you put in that payload, because you're not going to be able to do one-liners. You're not going to be able to send one payload, then, oh, we forgot the keys. Come back, send it back again. Oh, we forgot that other thing. Yes. Send it back again.
Yes.
So I like to communicate in that way. I like to communicate with a very thoughtful payload that when I send it, it contains everything you require to do what is in your hands. And yes, of course, sometimes I might miss something, but I really try and put energy. And it doesn't matter if that message goes, I would say that I spend more time composing a message like that than a message going to someone that others might think is an important person or an investor or whatever. It's very important that you communicate effectively, efficiently, coherently, and that you reread also what you are about to send. Because when you write something, maybe it doesn't make sense. You have to go back and reread it, and you have to really think, if I were reading this on the other end,
with the context they have,
am I contradicting myself here? Am I actually helping them or making them their life more difficult?
Yeah.
And it's also important that you're very transparent about it. You're not always expected to know everything. And it's fine as well for you to think out loud. But you have to say that. You have to say, hey, I'm going to think out loud with you on that thing. And this is what I'm thinking. Let me know what you're thinking. So I really try to communicate this way. And even though it might seem overwhelming in the beginning, I'm sure that receiving those long messages on Slack might be like, oh, Jesus Christ, I need a lot of time to comprehend that. But what I see is that, and it's funny, without a fail, with every team that I've worked that I was communicating like that, I ended up getting the same back. And then I saw the same people communicating with other people in that same way. So it must have worked. I don't know.
No, look, again, having worked with you, now working with you, and also before, and we'll talk more about Peggy in a bit. Why you're good at it, I think it was because you've been an engineer, because there's a lot of, again, the way to structure things. And I think the logic of an engineer, like the if-else loop, these kind of things, the if-else statements, the loops, etc., like they just, like you can run things in your head maybe more than regular people. Like literally, as you execute your code, you have to kind of execute it. I don't know how to explain it, but I believe engineers have an advantage.
I think it's more about role playing. I really put myself in a situation virtually and mentally. Like I don't just, you see that a lot when people review designs, like, Figma and all that stuff. And all they focus on is like whether it looks good or like, I don't know, whether this button should be like this. But what's actually important is to mentally use that thing.
Yeah.
With your mind, click on things, find yourself lost in a path. Find yourself using something for the first time. Try and envision all those things. And yes, there is an engineering part to it, but it's more about actually practice and being very observant with things.
And to move on and maybe talk more about what you're building now, how you're building now versus before, also everything you've learned. I would like to know what happened after Balloon? What did it ended up leaving you with? Was it a successful experience? Why was it? What is your advice to someone who would go through a similar route? Was it essential to do what you're doing now? Was it a good tool today that you use, etc.? Like, what was the importance of that step in your journey?
Balloon was a very successful journey. I learned so many lessons in such a short time that no MBA or nothing else can get you. Without being able to say much, it was a very successful endeavor and very fulfilling.
You've exited, right? Like this is something. Like you no longer work there, so I guess you exited.
No, I don't work there, yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think we're all proud to see what we actually built and see how much impact it had and seeing other people use it in such diverse and impactful way. It was crazy. I mean, I remember the kind of events that we would have from a yoga conference to a World Ceramic Congress, which was a crazy event. I think it was running for like 3 or 4 days, 24/7 across all time zones. Ceramics. We had people doing ceramics and pottery, workshops and giving lectures. And it was crazy. The fact that you could have in the same platform, people doing yoga to building ceramics to having, we had a church gathering at some point, I think an event out of the Philippines with maybe 20,000 people, to marketing conferences, to all sorts of things that you would have never imagined. And seeing that thing that people at most times were enjoying, it's something that didn't have to exist in the world. It came out of your mind and hard work, collective, and it's out there and people are using it, people are interacting with it. That feeling itself is so gratifying, and I'm very proud of what the team built. I mean, it was an unbelievable team.
Without I guess you cannot share maybe a lot of details, but how important was Balloon to where you are now? And very honestly, maybe you would say it created some caution. So now, I don't have to worry about X. I know that also you became a dad after that. So I would like to also learn more about your personal life and how that changed. Or maybe do you have more expectations now because you did something successful before, so now you have to, and now you should only get better, right? Or what if you don't, etc.
So one thing that I learned was indeed to really pay attention to the unit of economics of the business that you build. Make sure that it makes sense, that it has some kind of path, or if not path to profitability, that at least the financials make sense. If you build something that is costing you, the margins are super, super thin, razor thin, and you need to basically sell to 100 million people for you to make something significant, then you really have to think about it, right? It really helped me. It really made me think about not just about revenue, but also financials, like how much does it cost you to actually acquire a customer? How much do you expect to make from that customer? What is the cost of goods sold? For example, with Balloon, we run into an issue where the costs for, let's say, video streaming, especially for like calls like this, was insane. Like there were edge cases in which we ended up losing a lot of money from how much it cost.
Just I'm streaming it.
Yeah, and that we didn't know in the beginning. So then we start optimizing for that. So it's very important to have that in mind. The other one is that, like, if let's say the business is not profitable, but it's going well, another possible outcome is that you sell that business. But for you to sell that business, you have to make it as sellable and as seller friendly as possible. And that means many things. In hindsight, we did many things right without knowing. And I'm talking about keeping very clean and organized tab on how you do things, everything from your financials, accounting, onboarding, regulatory stuff, security, account permissions, all that stuff. The better you structure those things, the more likely it is that you have something that is more easily handed over and it looks more appealing and less scary. It's the same thing. Let's say if you have a house and you want to sell that house. Are you more likely to sell that house if you have a record of all the people who did maintenance and you have it clean and everything is organized? Or are you more likely to sell that house if it's a mess and you don't know who came to fix the AC and all that stuff? So for example, I was working with an engineer who was building a house, and like the way they build houses, they give you an actual file, like a physical file and a USB as well, with all the details about the house, the color codes of the walls, the engineers who came to maintain things. I mean, this is a definition of a much more sellable asset. So as you build things, make sure they're sellable. And with that comes also documenting things and having even standard operating procedures so that you yourself, who very likely might not be part of that deal, or you might be part of the deal for a short-term period, are not an obstacle to that thing being sold. If all the knowledge and all the information is in your head, then obviously it's very difficult for you to sell what it is that you build, because they have to buy you. You come as a package, as one. And you might not even want to be bought, by the way. You might, want to sell the thing and not have anything to do with it. The better you structure and the cleaner you keep things, the more you position yourself for success if you have traction and the business is going well.
Clear. So especially if you're starting a business where the end result is to sell it, don't take documentation lightly. Don't have.
I mean, there are two outcomes always. Either you're profitable or you have to sell.
No, maybe you have a lifestyle like for example, we do have some profitable businesses. We don't think about selling them now, etc. But like if you're building,
that's what I said. Either you're profitable. Yeah. I mean, you can also sell if you're profitable, but if you're profitable, you don't have to think about selling. It's up to you.
Yeah, at least. Yeah. I get your point.
Right.
Yep. But otherwise, then by default, you have to be extremely clear, document your things, make sure things can scale with or without you, etc. All of that. And this is something you've learned, for example, like from the get-go to, it's not like you're going to obsess fully about it, but for sure there's a box. I'm here to, for example, build and sell. So by default, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to do.
I mean, you have to think that this is a, potential outcome. So you have to optimize for that as well. And as I said as well, try and build a business that gets you closer to the life you want to lead. And when I say the life you want to lead, I'm not talking about going to Bali and drinking cocktails. Yeah. I'm talking about in the day-to-day work, doing more of the things that you enjoy doing and less of the things that you don't enjoy doing. I'm not going to make it sound like, if you like what you're doing, you're never going to work a day in your life. That's bullshit. Even if you love your job, you're going to have to do file your taxes, do things that most likely you don't like. Yeah. So at least try and do more of the things that you like and pick your battles. For example, let's say if you know that you hate doing something, let's say you hate doing sales, but you're very good at doing product-led growth. Okay, do product-led growth if you think that this can work with your product. It doesn't work with all the products. But pick your battles. Don't try and do everything. Don't try and make everyone happy. That's super important, because in the beginning, there is this misconception that your product has to appeal to everyone. That's not the case. Ideally, you start a product because you have identified a very specific niche or tribe that needs it, and you go after them. If you try and build something for everyone, if you're at the scale of Amazon, you can do it. If you're at the scale that we're discussing, probably you cannot do it. And you're just going to end up diluting your value proposition and meaning nothing to more people than meaning something to fewer people.
Okay, moving on to Peggy, I guess, which is your latest...
What's Peggy?
Your latest venture. Do you want to tell us what's Peggy first, to start with? Who's Peggy or what's Peggy?
Who's Peggy? Peggy is this... so the name comes from this character from Mad Men. There was this this character who really kind of ascended throughout the series and the seasons. She started as a copywriter, but ended up being like the creative extraordinaire. And Peggy is our latest venture, again, with a small team. Peggy is a platform that helps you build creatives for your social posts and for your ads, on-brand creatives, in super short time, in under a minute. It's leveraging AI as well for the copy and for the creatives. And it really makes it much easier to generate all these creatives at scale. We all know how mundane and how difficult it can be to generate creatives. Like, I'll give you an example. Let's say if you are a travel platform, travel booking platform, and you have 50 destinations, and you want to run 50 campaigns for each destination, much better than me. And then for each campaign, you need, I don't know how many different creatives to A/B test, but also for different formats, for Instagram story, for Instagram feed and all that stuff. We're talking about hundreds of creatives. That is definitely not anyone's best use of time to create those things. So with Peggy, you can generate creatives at scale, but also it doesn't have to be at scale. You can be a small business and you might want to generate, one creative or two creatives or whatever, but you might not know how to do it in terms of you're not a designer, or you don't have access to designers, or you don't have the budget. So Peggy is for you as well. And that's who we're solving for. To start with, we're solving for small and medium businesses, owners that we personally know and we've talked to over the years. And we know that they're struggling with generating creatives for their social posts consistently, but also for their ads. And that's why we built Peggy.
Okay. Is it more for today? Is it more for social posts, or is it for ads? Or is it for both? And then we'll see how, what people use it for.
We just launched in beta, but so far it seems that most people use it for ads. But for example, we use it also for our social posts. If you go on our Instagram handle, you will see that some of our social posts are actually built on Peggy. So we are actually using Peggy to advertise Peggy, which is very cool.
Awesome. Okay. On that note, can you give us a demo, like a quick demo? Show us what the platform is about.
You mean like right now?
Yeah, right now. We can share your screen. It's gonna be recorded and placed.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. Why not? You put me on the spot. I like it.
Of course, we're gonna see what you like. There's a segment where I would like to see what you're really working on, and tell us a little bit, like document what's going on. Show us the product, but also what are you doing this week? Are you busy? You're on podcast, man. You should be.
No, I'm not busy. Why are you saying that?
No, but really, tell us what you're doing. You just launched. You're in beta. You're getting started. We'll hopefully help you get some initial customers.
So that's us. That's peggy.us. That's our domain. That's our beautiful website, which you can access here. And you can see basically we're explaining what I just said here, which is that with Peggy, you can create creatives. You can generate creatives for social media posts. Social media posts and ads very quickly in under a minute. Actually, it probably takes less than a minute, but I'm gonna take a bit longer just to show you how it works. We even have a very cool video that you can get access to and see how Peggy works.
What are you using for landing page? For the landing page, what are you using?
This one, it's Webflow.
Nice. Okay, so this is an easy, quick way to build.
Yeah. So we decided with Balloon, we even build the website ourselves, and it had some benefits in the sense that it was very tightly integrated with the app, and we had much more control on certain things, in terms of integrations and all that. But this time we just decided to keep things a bit simpler, which I have not regretted. I think it was a great choice.
I believe so too. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I know you're a huge fan of Bubble. We've cooked some things in Bubble together. So this one is with Webflow, and then the main app as well is something that we've built, which is a very, very fast optimized app that I'm going to show you right now. And why not we just start just with the app? So that's basically the Peggy dashboard. That's what you see when you first log into the app, and it's free to log in. You can just log in with email and password, or just with Google. And you can start a free trial. So when you start, you can just add your payment method. You don't get charged. You get a 1 week of free trial. We give you 10 credits, which I'm going to explain what the credits are for. And you can generate as many creatives as you like, and then you can use your credits to download those creatives. As you see here, the section, we have a nice welcome video here, which you can open and see how you can get started with Peggy. We have an intro tour, which just because I've used the product before, it didn't come up, but if you ever want to launch it again, you can just launch it and you can go through the intro tour and see how you can use the platform, which is very, very useful.
Is it like a plugin, or did you build this tour, or is it also something?
We use the JavaScript library, but we configure it ourselves.
Yes, I'm just stressing on the things that you don't need to worry about, right? As you build multiple products, there are certain things You just flow. You don't reinvent.
Very good point. One thing that was very important with, especially with Balloon, I'm going to take a small parenthesis because it involves a lot of technologies that take a lot of time if you want to build yourself. Video streaming, broadcasting, messaging, notifications, all that stuff. We took the path of buying versus build. So in order to speed things up and build things better at that scale, in some cases, yes, you might pay for a service, but you building that yourself, you're going to end up paying much more because it's going to take you ages.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to focus on your core product,
Yeah.
and you're probably going to do a shitty job, which means that the thing is going to be crappy, it's going to be crashing and all that.
Yeah.
So when faced with the option, unless you're talking about your unique IP, your secret sauce, I would always, in the beginning at least, I'm talking about startups like us. I'm not talking about companies that start with $100 million in the bank. I would always go for the option of using a platform to get something done. And if scale then makes it a thing that you have to look into, for example, let's say Dropbox. When Dropbox started, they were using S3 to store files. But when they reached a certain level of scale where S3 didn't make sense financially and they had the capability to build it, they built their own storage engine.
I've seen it with some founders that I've worked with, or like even they don't calculate the cost like that because there's like, yeah, but why would you pay like $300 a month for this? It's like, dude, like the cost,
especially like engineering heavy companies with developers leading the company, insisting on building everything in-house because they think that building it in-house is better, as if like you're going to build it better than, an army of developers at Google or Microsoft. And they're building like, Socket.io themselves rather than using something like Pusher, let's say. And they're doing everything themselves. And I've been there, done that, and I will never do that to start with.
How can you give a framework that is very logical? Because for me, I also calculate when they tell me that, it's like, yeah, but it's going to cost us X dollars per month, etc. But like you have it now and you can get the feedback on however feature you're trying to build tomorrow. Otherwise, there's everyone on the payroll who's not going to know what's going to happen to this for for a few months until you build it. Like, how is this not a big cost?
Yeah, you have to think of opportunity because you have to think of how much time it's going to take you to build it, and you're probably not going to build it as well. And then you have to really look at the numbers. Like, if you're talking about a decision that's like a subscription of $29.99, just do it. Most people, again, maybe not everyone, but most people should be okay with that. Now, if you're talking about a subscription that's like thousands of dollars or something, but then what are you building? Are you building a trading platform where you need like access to real market data? Then probably
also don't build.
Yeah, it depends. And also many other things are just pay as you go. Let's say, I don't know, Twilio. Can it get expensive? Yes, it can. But to start with is pay as you go. Do you have any customers? No. Okay, so how much do you pay? Zero.
That's the ideal.
Try and find either pay as you go or something that's like ideally the fixed cost is not as high.
Yep, 100%.
So going back to Peggy here, the dashboard. Yeah, you have here some helpful tips, which we have crafted ourselves. And here you can see some quick statistics on the number of brands you have, the campaigns, and the credits. As you can see, I've topped up my account here with quite a few credits. Credits is basically what you used to download the creatives that we generate.
When you download or when you generate?
When you download. Generate, you can generate as many as you like, and we'll see it right now. So why don't we just start with creating a brand, which is the first thing. So let's start with a brand that I know and like. I've heard it's pretty good. Do you know these guys?
They're doing well. They're doing okay.
They're doing well?
Okay, just
the founder is a bit, but they're good.
Let's get me started.
So how can you create a brand? There are two ways to do it. One way is you can just put a website, and literally it's just magic. We just scan the website and we put in all the information for you. Or you can, if you don't have a website or if you want to fill up the information manually, you can do that as well. In this case, let's just do that and let's pray it's going to work. Usually it does. Amazing, it worked. So just like that, we pulled the name of the brand, we pulled some description, the brand logo, and the brand colors.
Nice.
And these colors as well, you can rearrange if you want to. I'm gonna show you later on why. That took probably like 5 seconds. You can just save the brand, and the brand is saved. After this, the next thing to do is naturally you can go and create a campaign. And here, by the way, you have a drop down where you can switch between the brands that you have created. So when you use the platform, you use it within the context of that brand. Let's go here and create a campaign. A campaign is basically a theme or a campaign, as the word says, that you want to generate creatives for. It could be just an awareness campaign. It could be your Christmas offer campaign. It could be your buy one, get one free campaign, whatever that is. Each company has different things they want to target and they want to run campaigns for. Again, here you can create a campaign by scanning a website, and that could be, for example, the same URL that I just used. Or if you want to run a more specific campaign, if you have microsites, if you have a landing page for your campaign, you could also scan that. So let's say if you're, I don't know, Volkswagen, and you run a campaign for your latest electric vehicle, ID4, or if you're Tesla, chances are you have a landing page for that or a microsite. So you could just type in that there, and we're going to pull in all the relevant information. Or again, you can create that manually. For now, let's just use the same website just for like the sake of simplicity. Let's say we want to create an awareness campaign. So we scan the website. That might take a bit longer, but hopefully it should work. If not, that's going to be an issue. Okay, it worked. That was stressful. And as you can see, we try and fill in as much information as we can to make your life easier and make things very, very fast. So we got here the campaign name, the language, some campaign description. I hope you're happy with it.
It's very close to what we do in general.
Perfect. I mean, you can always edit it. So this is fully editable. I could type anything here, but this is just to get you started and make things much faster. And then you pick the formats that you want to generate creatives for. So you can search for formats. So we make it very easy. If you want a story, or if you don't want to search, first of all, you can see them grouped in two different buckets, if you will. One is creatives for social. And we show you here the platforms like Instagram, X, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and TikTok. And the other one is for display networks if you're running ads there. And you can see again the icon. So let's say in this case, we want to generate creatives for square format and story format. So we select these two. We go ahead, we click continue. And then here we show you some strategies that we think are relevant to what you're trying to do. And these are all generated via AI as well. So we feed in the model with the information that we have gathered about your brand and your campaign, and then we present you with these options. And also, if you're not happy with any of these options, you can also just type your custom strategy, and you can type whatever you want there.
Nice. Let's take recruitment, for example. Click the second one, exclusive talent recruitment.
Shall I go back?
No, it was fine. I'm not sure where you picked strategy. I think it was.
Yeah, I picked strategy. Okay, for now,
it's fine.
Let's continue with this one.
Yeah.
And here we start basically building the preview of the creatives. And again, like we generate creatives in different formats. So this is just a kind of a placeholder because not all of them are going to be square, but this is just to give you an idea of how everything comes together. So the first thing you can see here is the tone of voice. So we have different categories of tone of voice. We have engaging, persuasive, emotional, and again, we also have custom tone. So let's say here, you tell me, what tone do you want?
Like casual or friendly, maybe. Like
friendly, where is that? The friendly.
Friendly, okay, maybe the first.
Are you happy with this one as a title that we populated?
Yeah, it's good, but maybe I'll start with a verb, probably. Like grow your startup in MENA.
Let's try another AI option. Boost your MENA startup. How about that?
Let's say this is better. Or grow instead of boost, I would use, but let's see.
Okay, you can edit it.
By the way, that's always interesting because you're so fast to get up this. Like, let's say I want to do this on ChatGPT. Honestly, like the context that I need to feed every single time versus here, like just create next, and type one word. I love this. And it's already in the text where it needs to be to publish. So all of that is really like also super straightforward. Nice.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Let's say we're happy with this today or with this one, or you want to change anything?
Yes. Just like apply today instead of join us today. Let's say we're not hiring. Let's see
what else we're going to get here. We're going to join us today. Did we get ahead? Join us now. Okay, let's make it apply now or apply today.
Apply now. Good.
Apply now. And you can see here, this is getting populated. Now, the next thing is we need to add an image here to fill up that space. So you can either upload an image or last week, we launched this integration with Pexels, which is a stock photo library.
Yep. Will you also do AI? Will you be able at some point to create your own AI overlay image?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, that's also in the plan. But for now, the cool thing about it is, again, we try not to have you start from scratch. So when you click on search photos, you will see here that the search term itself is also populated. So we try to find relevant images that we think make sense for, okay, maybe
that's the engineering empathy we were talking about before. Like that's the engineering. This is a really good example. Yeah.
In this case, I like to put someone smiling. Like, you want to get people to like grow their brand with you. So let's say you select this one. And you can see this looks pretty happy. Her business is growing. She's happy with growth levers. Now, you might notice here that the logo is not very visible.
Mhm.
What you can do is, if you want to, let's say if you run a campaign that has a different look and feel, let's say you have a Christmas campaign, you want to make it more Christmassy. Or if you're not happy with, if you're not happy with the brand colors and stuff, you can go back to the brand and readjust them. But also you can do things here where you can basically override the brand. And one cool little thing, which thank you to your amazing team for the recommendation we added recently, is to be able to change colors, just to like reorder colors and see how this affects the generated creative. So let's say if you drag this as a primary color, this happens. If you take that back up, and then we can see like, whatever seems to work best.
Okay.
This is nice.
Okay.
This is pretty cool.
Makes sense.
Or let's say this one. I like this one.
Yeah.
We can keep this one, and then we can save and create the campaign. And then you will see here the confetti, which means that something fun just happened. The creatives are being generated here.
Okay.
You will see here, this is just a watermark, the Peggy logos that gets repeated. This is not how the creative actually looks when you download it. I'm going to show you that. And these are just the different templates that we have. And just to show you as well how different brands look like. By the way, like all those templates, we're going to be adding more and more templates. This is just the beginning. We're going to have templates specific to industries, templates specific to themes. We're going to have templates contributed by our directors. Later on, we might have the option where you might even be able to buy off the template so that you're the only one using it. And all this was just generated like basically in seconds. So, you could use all these creatives if you want.
That's very interesting.
And run A, B, C, D, E, F tests as many as you like.
Can I ask you a question also? Not being in the industry. Can you, for example, let's say I want to run a campaign and can you kind of build templates on the fly where you go see, okay, let's say I'm in fruits and vegetables, right? I sell fruits and vegetables in the UAE. Can you go check who are the top performing competitors in UAE or not from the Facebook ads library, for example, or from like very open, like public places where you could actually fetch the images have been used now by your competitors and then on the fly figure out what's better and assemble the template and then give me what people have been successfully, working on and only do better, ideally. Like take that as a baseline and, build on it. Is there something?
This is exactly the plan.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now you're having us revealing our plan. So this is part of the plan, exactly to tap into like collective intelligence and data out there, insights, to really deliver you templates and creatives that don't just look pretty, but actually convert. Because at the end of the day, you don't just want to post things that are pretty. You just want to convert, right? You have a certain goal. So that's definitely in the plan. And also in the plan to allow you to bring your own template, if you will, based on the specs that we have. So you can load it up and then you can just really scale up your marketing game. Now, those templates here, you can obviously download them if you want. And when you download them, you use a credit. Or let's say you want to download this one. You can select multiple. You can star them. You can favorite them. So if you want to keep track of, which ones are the ones that you really liked, you can always find them here. You can go back here to the campaign. Another thing that we do is alongside the creative itself, there's some copy that goes with it. So let's say if you post it on Facebook or Instagram, you might have some headline and description and all that. So we actually help you generate that text as well. So if you click here on suggested copy, again, with AI, we can generate that for you. So let's say headline, scale your MENA startup, description here, boost revenue, hire top talent, apply now, and some primary text here. And of course, you can always regenerate. You can just hit here on the magic stars, and then you can copy that text and you can paste it wherever you're about to post it. And of course, coming soon, we're going to have integration with the advertising platforms so that all this can get pushed directly to your Facebook, Meta business account, or your Google Ads account, so that you don't even have to copy paste.
Will you enter the data space, or would you focus more on creative as a next step? Like, would you just become much better at creative, or would you also, like, what part of the problems of a marketeer you would solve? Because I believe AI will solve pretty much most of them and make us very productive and very good. How do you?
It's a very good question. Ideally, the answer is both, and ideally, one should educate the other. So, if like us generating better creative has to be also data backed. Now, whether we build the product as well to provide you all this intelligence and data, because obviously we're a small team, we can't do everything in one go. I think the direction we're taking is more to prioritize very high quality creatives backed by data. And then, of course, after that is coming the whole like data integration and insights and performance. So it's a matter of prioritization. But again, it will all be defined by, when you build a product, there are things that you have in mind and you have to have your vision. You cannot just build by committee. But then when you put a product out there, then you have collision with the real world and the market. And then you start getting feedback as well. So as a team, we're not too stubborn to just keep on doing what we think is the thing we should be doing if we see the opposite signals. You have to, read the science, and also you have to have your vision. You have to have some spine as a product and as a company. So we try and operate in the intersection of these two.
Today, where are you, do you think? Do you think you have a very, I believe it's a very solid MVP personally, but like, do you think you've already kind of validated this is successful? What will guide your roadmap? What is on your plate this week? What are you doing? What are your main concerns? What are your main things you want to finish?
This plate is all about analytics and data and tracking, just for us to make sure that our growth efforts are measurable and we know exactly what's happening and where we need to double down.
This means what? Which tools?
So when it comes to tracking, we're talking about being able to track key interactions and use that data to trigger other things. So let's say key interactions as in who signed up, how they signed up, for which plan they signed up, whether they created a brand, they created a campaign, and based on this, educate our advertising campaigns, but also being able to reach out to our customers, because obviously, as I said in the beginning, people lead busy lives. It's not like all they think about is Peggy. They have their own lives, they have their own problems. So if we are to really help them, we have to remind them every now and then of the things that they can do with Peggy to make their life easier. And that goes back into nurturing email campaigns, drip campaigns, but everything has to be very timely and has to be highly contextual. You sending me an email about something that I didn't do or something that I don't seem to be interested in, it's probably going to annoy me more than anything else. But if I just, let's say, created a brand, but I haven't created a campaign, you sending me an email that, hey, now that you created a brand, you can also create a campaign. This is how you can do it, and this is how you can save money and time. Then that's, I'm interested, obviously.
Yep.
So we try and be very much contextual in how we do outreach and take into account these key user interactions. So this is something that we're focusing a lot this week, because obviously we build a product that we're very proud of. I think the product is very solid. In terms of validation, we have had some initial traction. There are other ways that out there which are different ways, but still validate the hypothesis that people need an easier, faster way to generate those creative. And right now it's not as easy and intuitive always. I want to show you as well, some other brands. Let's say here I've created some brands for some campaigns for Emirates, which obviously we all know from the region.
Yep.
So you can see how similar templates look so much different. And by the way, this is in Greek because I was experimenting with something. So we're also multilingual. And you can see how similar templates look very different with different color palette. Let's say, for example, this one, I really like. This is like looking out of a plane window.
Yeah, it looks elegant.
And yeah, exactly. And it was just created by AI in seconds. So this is just for you to get an idea. And even if I go here on our Instagram, Peggy, I want to show you very quickly some of the creatives that we have. This, for example, was generated on Peggy. And you see it looks nothing like the creatives you saw before, just because the brand is different, the tone of voice is different, the copy is different, and also this is created on Peggy. Again, different template. So it just goes to show how those templates, which, as I said, we're going to get more and more of, can get you a long way, and they can really help you speed up your creatives game and efforts. That's in a nutshell, Peggy. As I said, we have many plans for more data integration, more AI, more templates, and these are the things that we're going to be focusing on in the coming weeks and months.
Okay.
And again, depend on product feedback.
This is really interesting, by the way. You know that I'm close to this space specifically, and I'm just trying to imagine how many things will really change in terms of efficiency, control, control. What I mean control means like my dream is to be able to wake up really and knowing how much every single startup we work with is doing, how good, how bad, and why. And like usually it's the team who digs and we're figuring things out, etc. But imagine you have like a security camera on autopilot, right? Just like checking all of these and triggering in my Slack channel exactly where I want to see like, hey, careful, there's this trend, etc. There's really a lot. I'm maybe thinking more on the data side as well, because at Growth Average, we focus more on data and performance, less on creative, but because startups kind of provide that. So our startup might be some of your potential customers, by the way. And any other startup who's looking to, to get this fast, efficient way of, creating these creatives. I also think communication will change between brands and between people. I think now that you're able to really create creatives that fast, like you can communicate maybe your emotion better than an emoji. Emojis are great, but like if you have AI now that you could, like, I don't know if it as a human or as a brand or etc., but like imagine customer service at scale where you also can send an image or something wherever based on the context that this user only will find so nice and funny and wherever. You can create any image about anything given the context.
Whatever I showed you is being consumed now through a user interface, which is the app that you saw. But obviously everything is API first, which means that nothing stops us later on from offering an API kind of version of Peggy, which can, then you can really imagine like where you can generate creatives. And another thing that I forgot to mention is like creatives for other purposes. And collateral for other purposes, not just for like social posts and advertising. And you could, with an API, generate them on the fly, highly personalized in real time. And with the right level of context and the right level of signals, you can really create something that resonates and really talks to individuals, not just groups and segments.
It seems like an exciting future to look forward to on that front. What else do you want to leave us with in terms of like really all the lessons that you've learned, etc.? If you really want to talk to yourself a long time ago or to someone who's trying to build and succeed in the MENA region specifically, do you have any kind of advice, anything that you wish you didn't do or anything that you wish that someone told you? What can we do better? Or what can, what can someone really learn from your failures and through your successes?
There's no easy way to learn things other than, going through the hard steps and hard work. And I wouldn't have changed that. And even the things that were potentially harmful or like draining in my experience, let's say, for example, having extreme sense of, FOMO when it comes to business or like, needing to do this and that and everything. Right now, I see it as a phase that is good that is behind me, let's say. But again, you should have gone through it for you to know. But one of the most important things that I've learned over the years and as I've grown a bit is to be very honest with myself and try and pursue what really makes me happy rather than what I think my peers, society, my circle, my domain expects of me. It's a simple thing, but it's so liberating. And I think so many people suffer from that and they end up wasting and spending years doing something that just doesn't feel fulfilling. And these are years that you're just not going to get back.
Yeah.
The other thing which I've noticed, and again, I guess it comes with age and, there's a time and space for everything, is that when I was younger, everything felt like I was on a bullet train and I was going super fast. And the fact of being on that bullet train, going 500 kilometers an hour and seeing everything just like, green, 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 brown, white, green, 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 like because you don't have the time to see like trees, land, cow, whatever. It was exciting by itself. And there is value in that. But as years go by, I find myself more appreciating the value of immersing in things, which is like, imagine the same metaphor being on a train, but the train goes much slower and you actually have, I know slower might sound boring, but you have the ability to immerse in things. And when you immerse in things, that goes also in business.
I don't think slow is boring when it comes to experiences, man. Like you have to slow down. You have to digest the full experience. You have to live it. You can't skim through.
But same goes with business. When you build a venture, just to like bring it back to what we're discussing, you can go in like, fast and like speed, and you try and do everything for everyone and all that. But if you really try and immerse yourself in the problem you're solving, chances are you're going to craft a better solution for a very well-defined audience. And that increases the likelihood of you building something successful.
Yeah.
And you can only do this by immersing. There's no way, you cannot fast forward diving deep into something. You just can't. you know?
Yeah.
Either you splash around something or you dive deep.
Exactly.
There is different products and different industries require different approaches. But I would say for us being startup founders, most of us, solopreneurs or like with very small teams and not having millions of dollars in the bank, we probably should be building something that addresses a niche, a very tight group. And that you can only do by being close to that group, by immersing in that group.
Iraklis, thank you so much for your time. It has been great. Thank you for being humble and for being very generous with your advice, for being brave, for saying things as they are, and just being a great person in general.
Oh, thank you. It was an absolute pleasure. And, for me, it's just a catch up with a person I really respect and love and admire. So
thank you so much.
It was an absolute pleasure.
It means a lot, man. Thank you. Have a nice one, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye. Bye.